melanjutkan rangkaian acara berikutnya, yaitu International Webinar dengan tema Future of Audit and Financial Reporting. Kami akan melanjutkan dengan penyampaian dalam bahasa Inggris. Okay, good morning audience. Now we continue to the next session. International Webinar, Future of Audit and Financial Reporting. And will be guided by Mr. Stefanus Arianto as Head of Accounting Study Program, Multimedia Nusantara University.
First of all, we will present Mr. Stefanus' profile. Mr. Stefanus' educational background, he takes his diploma in Sekolah Tinggi Akuntansi Negara and bachelor degree in University of Indonesia. And he continued his magister in accounting program in University of Indonesia. His professional experience as lecturer in Multimedia Nusantara University and as head of accounting study program in Multimedia Nusantara University. And he also takes part in Indonesian Financial Standard Implementation Team in the period 2020-2024. Now, let us welcome Mr. Stefanus to lead this session. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, college lecturers and students. Thank you for joining the CPA Days 2020 International Web Seminar organized by Indonesian Institute of Public Accountant in collaboration with Multimedia Nusantara University. Let me introduce myself. I am Stefanus Arianto. Now I am Head of Study Program in Accounting in University of Multimedia Nusantara. It is a great honor for me to be the moderator on this session, Future of Audit and Financial Reporting on CPA Days 2020. As we know that this year, 2020, is a very notable season for all of us as human beings, since we push to become more creative and get connected to each other during the pandemic season. But there will always be future for us. This pandemic season will end one day and we will have to figure out many things when the time comes and be ready with the challenge. The webinar will be about issues surrounding the future development of auditing standards, the technology involvement in auditing that will reshape the audit profession in the future, and also the issues about future corporate reporting that will be the future issue for the accounting. So we have three panelists today. I will introduce the panelists. So first of all, I will briefly introduce Ms. Beverly Bowman. Ms. Beverly Bowman is the Deputy Director at the International Auditing and Assurance Standards Board. Ms. Bowman has been with IASB in New York since 2011, working on a variety of projects, including the IASB new projects on fall. Previously, Ms. Bowman worked for 15 years in a technical and training role in audit firms in Australia, UK, and South Africa. And the second panelist is Dr. Ari Wibowo, SEST MSAK CPA. Dr. Ari Wibowo got the bachelor degree from Pajajaran University in economics. And this is interesting also because Pak Ari Wibowo also have a bachelor degree in aeronautical engineering from Bandung Institute of Technology. And then Pak Ari also have a master degree from University of Indonesia, Magister of Accounting Science. And Pak Ari Wibowo also have a doctoral degree in accounting science from University of Indonesia. Currently, Pak Ari Wibowo working as a head of Financial Profession Development Center or P2PK at Ministry of Finance of Republic of Indonesia. And the third panelist is Mr. Steven Tanggara. Pak Steven got his bachelor degree in economics from Tarumanegara University. He is an Indonesian certified public accountant and also board member of Indonesian Institute of Certified Public Accountant. And Pak Stephen also is a director in assurance practice in PricewaterhouseCoopers Indonesia. Okay, for your information, the question and answer session will be open after the three panelists have finished their presentation. And now I'll ask you to give your full attention to the presentation of the first panelist, Ms. Beverly from IISP. Ms. Beverly.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I will start. So good day to everyone, and thank you very much for the opportunity today to talk to you a little bit about the work of the IISP. As I think has been noted, it has been a very difficult year, I think, for everyone. I think we're all looking forward to things changing, but I think for us as the IISP, the one thing that it has shown is that we are able to pivot really quickly, even in a world where setting standards can take a long time, but we have been able to make some changes quite quickly, and it's been good for us to sort of see how our standards have been used around the world and how they've withstood some of the pressures that have come from the current year. For those that aren't too familiar with what we do, we obviously, as we went into this COVID period and the pandemic, things changed. We had to pivot ourselves, change our work program a little bit, but we also have issued quite a lot of guidance for our existing standards. So if you aren't aware, then some of that could be helpful in today's world. But I'm not going to sort of speak about that today. I think today I'm going to talk about a little bit about what we're doing now and sort of how we're looking to the future of audits, and obviously thinking about things like technology and the things that have changed, particularly in the current environment. So if I could have the next slide, please. So I'll start off just a little bit talking about our strategy. Our strategy is a 4-year strategy. It goes from 2020 to 2023. And we have to make sure that our standards work, that they're usable, that people understand them. And we're spending a lot of time and effort to try and understand what it is that we need to do. Obviously, as an international standard setter, we are limited in capacity and resources. And so we have to choose very carefully where we put our focus and energy. And we spend a lot of time trying to work out what it is that needs to be done. Standard setting does take a particularly long period of time. It can take sort of between 3 and 5 years to set standards. And obviously with the rate of change of both the environment and things like technology, trying to sort of see what's coming up ahead and sort of make changes very quickly is very difficult for us. So we have been trying to turn our attention as to what it is that we need to do both now, because obviously there's issues and challenges with our current standards, but also what's coming in the future so that we can get ready for that. So we have a new chair, Tom Seidenstein, who started with us about 18 months ago, just in time for our new strategy period. And Tom has sort of led us through a little bit of a change. So as we finish some big standards, and I'll talk about that in a second, we're sort of looking now to things that we need to do now and do in the future. And in order to do that, we sort of set our strategy and our strategic objectives on really focusing on trying to understand what the stakeholder needs are and obviously what we need to do that's in the public interest. So we're looking very much to do more outreach. So hence this, there's a lot more outreach that we're trying to do. I think everyone's adjusting now to the virtual world, so it's becoming a little bit easier to perhaps do some of the outreach that we hadn't expected to do. We don't have to jump on a plane and travel for 18 hours to visit people. We can sort of jump on a virtual call, which has made things easier. We've also increased our emphasis on emerging issues, and I'll talk about that as we go through this presentation. And then we've also ourselves looked to be more agile and innovative, both in our standards, but also in the way that we do things. Obviously, the whole world is moving much more towards a virtual world. We've been having a lot more of, obviously, all of our meetings in a sort of virtual environment. But I think some of that will continue into the future, even when things start to go a little bit back to normal and people start to travel. So really, we're just trying to make sure that people are able to use our standards, that they are capable of consistent and proper implementation. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So I thought I would just start by talking a little bit about where we are now, and what we've been doing and where we're going for now, and then I'll talk about the future. We've had our previous strategy, which we call setting the foundation. So we've looked at some of our really big foundational standards, and we looked at ISO 315, which is the risk identification and assessment. It's not yet effective. It'll be effective next year, but it will bring change around how the auditor sets the audit. We had changes coming through on auditing accounting estimates. Those changes became effective at the end of last year. People are starting to implement them this year. And so I think really just making the looking at accounting estimates a lot more robust. And we've built in a lot more concepts to try and help with that sort of risk identification and then the responses to those risks. We are busy at the moment with our group audit standard, so that should hopefully be finished by the end of next year. Again, really having a look at how the group audits are structured, how the group audits are done, how the group auditor interacts with the component auditors. A couple of years ago, as most of you would probably know who use the ISAs, is that we've obviously completed our auditor reporting standards. Those we are busy at the moment doing a post-implementation review to see whether the standards have done what we expected them to do and whether there's any other issues or challenges that we need to have a look at. We have just completed our quality management standards in September. And the quality management standards consists of obviously quality management for the firm, which is quite a big change. We've moved from a quality control to a quality management. So really trying to identify quality risks and putting policies and procedures in place to address those quality risks. And then with that comes a separate standard now on engagement quality reviews, really focusing in on who can do them and what the work that needs to be done in there. And then obviously at the engagement level, looking at what the engagement partner has to do with regard to quality management. So quite big changes coming through. They haven't been published yet. We're waiting for approval from our oversight board, and then those will come through and they are applicable in 2023. If you haven't been aware of what's going on with those quality management standards, I would suggest starting to think about them. They are quite different to the quality control of firms today. We're also trying to focus very much on implementation activities for some of these really big foundational standards. We understand that we write the words, we write them in English, we write them in fairly complicated ways. It's a complex world. Sometimes we have to have complexity within the standards. But what we're trying to do is really focus in on providing some implementation tools as we introduce these standards to help with the implementation and the application of these standards and the sort of as the changes come through, so that we can have an effective and efficient application of these standards. And then another standard which we've just completed, which is not audit, but it relates to agreed upon procedures. So just really clarifying some of the concepts in that standard to do with agreed upon procedures, where you have no assurance at all, just being clear as to whether the practitioner needs to be independent, what goes into the practitioner's report, what they can and can't do, and we've now incorporated non-financial information in there as well. So some changes coming through on that standard. So that's sort of all done except for the group audits, which will finish shortly, and that sort of sets the big foundation. We now have been looking towards the future and thinking about what it is that we need to do. And probably one of the biggest impacts that is coming through in audit is obviously technology. It's impacting a lot of different things in a lot of different ways. And so we've started a project on audit evidence, and I'll talk about that separately. We've separated that out because I think there are some things coming through that I think will be helpful. And I think the COVID world has really shown us where some of the issues and challenges are with regard to audit evidence. We've started some initial what we call information gathering on going concern and fraud. Both of them obviously very high on everyone's agendas at the moment. They've really been exacerbated now in the COVID environment. Much more opportunity for fraud as controls change, maybe not being done as they used to be. So a lot more sort of virtual working has led to the risks of fraud being enhanced. And then obviously going concern for a lot of entities. particularly as the world has changed, economies have shut down, things have changed, they're not able to get perhaps what you could get before, the supply chains have altered. So really all of that impacting going concern and sort of thinking about what it is that needs to be done. But I think for going concern and fraud, I think it's not just the COVID world. I think these were sort of public interest issues long before COVID came around. So we've been looking at sort of what we need to do, but it's still very early days. We've had a couple of roundtables. We have a consultation out at the moment on it, on the expectation gap, but we haven't quite decided. We're really trying to get to the root cause of the problem so that we do targeted standard setting. We're then doing a couple of projects on addressing complexity, understandability, scalability, and proportionality of our standards. One of those projects, we're developing a standard for what we call less complex entities. We're well into it at the moment. We're hoping to get an exposure draft. It'll be a single standard. Sort of if you have a less complex entity, nothing that's listed, there's nothing really complicated in there, the standard will be appropriate, and we sort of set out what it's written for. And then hopefully it'll be of use to many jurisdictions, in particular jurisdictions like you, where people need to have audits, but you don't necessarily need to use the full set of ISAs with all the complexity in there. So we're just working through sort of putting together that separate standard, a little bit like what the IASB did with EFRIS for SMEs. Obviously ours is different because we do sort of more of a flow of an audit, but sort of the same concept of it applies to sort of a smaller population, but hopefully we're hoping that will be helpful. We also are completing some guidance on EER, our extended external reporting, and I'll speak separately about that because I think it's relevant to what's happening in the future. And then I'll talk separately on technology and disruptive technology. So that sort of just gives an overview of all the work that we're doing at the moment. There's lots of other small things we're doing, but those are sort of our big projects so that you can see where we're going and where you can expect changes in the future. So if I could have the next slide, please. So I'll talk a little bit around technology here, and there's three areas that we're sort of focusing on with technology. It's very broad. It's a very broad term, and it can be applied to lots of different things. The standards as they're written today, they don't say you can't use technology, but they don't really facilitate the use of technology. So we've really had to think long and hard about what it is that we need to do in relation to technology. Excuse me. So I think the first thing we did was we had an immediate response, and we thought, well, standard setting takes a while. We can't change our standards immediately, but what can we do to help facilitate the use of technology? We know people are using it. Technology is changing at a really increasing rate. And so it's impacting the use of the standards. So even although, as I said, they're not prohibited from using technology, it doesn't really facilitate a lot of the technology that's being used today. So we've issued what we call non-authoritative guidance. So we've issued some staff alerts. There's one that should be coming in a couple weeks. There's one on documentation, and then we've got an FAQ with sort of a bunch of questions and answers with regard to the way that we use the current standards and technology. So sort of a little bit of a sort of quick fix for today's world or today's standards until we can actually do some standard setting and think about what else it is that we need to do. So on the current work plan, we have a couple of things. We're looking at the audit evidence project, which I'll speak to you about on the next slide. As we go through any of our projects, we're thinking about technology and how it impacts whatever it is that we're revising. So when we did 315, which is the risk identification and assessment, we built in a lot more about how the auditor uses technology and also how the auditor thinks about the client's technology and the IT systems that the client has. So you'll see in the revised 315, there is significantly more about technology. And we're doing that as we go through each of the standards that we're revising. As we've been thinking about fraud, obviously technology and the way that it's used really impacts fraud. And we've had a big roundtable a couple of weeks ago on fraud and technology, just to understand sort of three things really. The one is how technology is used to perpetrate fraud, how that's different to what it is before. And I think we heard loud and clear that the fraudsters themselves are just using such advanced technologies, it's hard for those who are looking for the frauds to keep up. We looked at the way that auditors are using technology. So obviously they're using a lot more sort of advanced data analytic tools, AI sometimes in there. So really just thinking about whether we need to make changes in the standard with regard to how the auditors are doing the audits, but also remembering that not everyone has the same access to technology. So some countries, some firms, they have very advanced technologies that's built into their methodologies. Some firms don't have access to the same technology. So when we write our standards, we need to make sure that we maintain that balance for those firms that perhaps don't have as advanced technologies or the ability to use such technologies. And then the last thing is we looked at the technology used by forensic auditors. We've really thought long and hard about in the sort of fraud space and how far we need to go, and should we be building in some of those technologies that the forensic auditors are using to try and identify frauds. We still haven't made any decisions about that, and obviously again caution on requiring too much for the purpose of an audit, because an audit is looking for risks of material misstatement from arising from fraud, whereas forensic auditors are looking for something very specific. So we want to just make sure that we maintain that balance. And then the last thing that we've done is we got some contract or some consultants in who and that's what that founder's intelligence on the slide is. And what they're consultants, and they've been doing work for us for about 6 months on trying to really look at the future and what's happening and what's going to really impact the IAASB in sort of 5 to 7 to 10 years time, because we need to start thinking now about how we need to maneuver to take account of what's happening. The changes are coming at a much more rapid pace. They interviewed a whole lot of representatives from various companies. So they looked at innovators, so people who are using these different technologies. They looked at obviously audit firms, both in what they're seeing at their clients and how they're using technology. They interviewed regulators, national standard setters, PAOs, sort of anybody that was sort of interested. They had sort of a very broad range of people they interviewed to try and sort of think about what's coming in the future. So really speaking to these people about what they thought was coming in the future. So the things that they identified were technologies impacting things like robotic process automation, APIs, which is application programming interfaces, natural language processing is increasing. The use of artificial intelligence, particularly in data analytics, is becoming much bigger. And then data anonymization and encryption, again, also impacting it. What they did say was the pace of innovation is fast and it's accelerating. And so we do need to be prepared and keep in touch with what's happening in the world. So what we've done is we've looked at that and seen sort of what it is. And the things that we've come up with 4 things, which is that sort of longer term strategy on the right hand side there, where we're talking about disruption in audit and assurance. So what are the things that we need to start thinking about now? So looking at how the profession will be redefined. So the people who are doing the audits, they're going to have a different skill set. So how should we be adjusting the standards for that? And then again, what should we be building into the standards, and what should we be thinking about how we change how we work to take account of this sort of different profession that will be coming in the future. Obviously, continuous and real-time audit and assurance is becoming much more of a real thing. It's not as significant right now, but it will be in sort of 3 to 5 years, where we may need to start developing standards to address assurance for that type of auditing. Obviously, looking at more analytics-based audit and assurance, as these data analytic tools become more advanced, it becomes a different kind of evidence, and it becomes a different kind of testing. So really thinking about how we need to make adjustments more overall to the audit standards to take account of that. And then obviously remote audit and assurance. So where auditors are not necessarily going to the clients, and this is again being tested quite well now in the world of COVID, is that there's not as much access to the clients. So things like professional skepticism become something different. And really thinking about what the issues around audit evidence are. So when you receive the audit evidence from the file from the client via email, what are the things that you need to be thinking about? Today we sort of have we accept that once the client gives you something, that unless there's something that tells you there's something wrong, it's genuine. But in a virtual world, how does that change? So really just thinking about how some of those things are really going to impact what we need to do going forward. And as we start to set our strategy for after 2023 to start building some of this in, so that we can start pivoting and being able to be relevant as we move forward in sort of the next 5 to 10 years. If I could have the next slide, please. Thank you. So audit evidence. So this is our project on audit evidence. We're going to revise the standard on audit evidence, and there'll be some other sort of changes throughout where we need to make them. We call them conforming amendments. We have done a lot of outreach to really try and work out what is wrong with audit evidence and what people aren't understanding, so that we only fix what's broken. So we've really tried to get to the root causes. It's been about 18 months of collecting evidence from a large number of sources, and they've got a list of issues that they think need to be addressed. They will be looking how the auditor makes judgments about the virtual evidence. There's going to be focus on the sources of evidence, so the internal evidence versus evidence from somebody else. What are the different things that the auditor needs to think about in those two different scenarios? Thinking about the sufficiency and appropriateness of evidence. So sufficiency is how much evidence do you need, but it's not necessarily just quantitative. So it's not just, you don't just need a pile of evidence, there's qualitative factors that go around that. So thinking about when do you have sufficient and appropriate audit evidence in today's world and with all these changes in a virtual environment. Thinking about the pervasiveness of the evidence that's needed, and then looking at the reliability of the evidence that is provided. So just thinking about some of those things and building some characteristics of good evidence into the standard, so that the evidence standard, which is quite old, and it still refers to things like faxes and some very old things, I think will be updated for a much more contemporary sort of evolving world. At the same time, we also, as we set our standards, we're very careful to try and not put anything that's sort of topical today. So even something like AI might be very sort of increasing today, but will AI be around in 10 years? So we try and not sort of put too many of those terms within our standards, otherwise we date them and it becomes difficult to change them. We have to sort of go through the whole standard setting process to make changes. So really trying to keep maybe some of those examples outside of the standard, still provide them, but have in the standard some of the more sort of principle-based characteristics that we think should go into the standard. So we will be looking at approving a project proposal in December 2020, so our meeting that's coming up, and then issuing an exposure draft probably 15 to 18 months after that, as they develop changes to ISA 500. So again, the standard is a little way off, and we will be doing lots of thinking about how we need to change the audit evidence standard to be relevant to today's environment. But you will see changes coming through on audit evidence in the next couple of years. Next slide, please. The one thing we are doing, which I think hopefully will be helpful, will probably be early next year. I think it's taking a little bit longer than we expected, but we are digitizing our handbook, which hopefully will be helpful for everybody. Our handbook at the moment is about, I don't know, 1,600 pages of a Word document or PDF document. Very difficult to find your way around that standard. So it won't change any of the standards or the requirements, but it will make it easier to navigate. They've really focused on being able to use it so that it's functional, reliable, and that it's an easy experience. We've looked at sort of how we can have the application material and the requirements together, where if there's a definition, how it can easily be seen on the same page, having the resources right there. So really just thinking about how the user interacts with it. It will be usable on a laptop, a phone, or an iPad. And it's really, hopefully, will help a little bit with the understandability and complexity of our standards. There is other work we're also doing on complexity and understandability, but I think this one is kind of a quick fix. Hopefully it will come early next year. And it's in a platform, it's being put into a content management system, that goes with the IESBA code for those that use the IESBA code, the ethics code, as well as the IPSASB, so the public sector accounting standards. They'll all be in the same platform. You can go and select one and you'll be able to dive into the standards. They all look a little bit different because we've set them up differently, but they'll all be within the same platform, so it'll be fairly easy to access any of the three. Next slide, please. So the other area, I'll move off audit now, is just thinking a little bit about, and we see it all the time, is just the increase in the desire for non-financial information and an increasing need for assurance thereon. So where we are at the moment is we have a standard which we call ISA 3000. It addresses assurance engagements that are not audits of financial information. And ISA 3000 basically gives you all the things that you need to go through to get reasonable assurance on something, and assuming that there's an underlying framework. And so it's sort of an umbrella standard. There's a couple of standards underneath it, including 3410 on greenhouse gas statements. So where auditors are required to issue assurance on greenhouse gas statements, it sort of explains to you how to apply ISA 3000. There've been other kinds of extended emerging reporting, which we call EER. And again, so this is around a lot of the non-financial reporting that gets done in a financial report, but there's assurance acquired on it. We're busy working at the moment on a big guidance document which will tell you how to apply 3000 to those EER engagements. And then as we sort of go through and we see what else is happening, we issue staff documents as we need to. So we've just recently issued a staff document on climate change, which kind of explains in the financial reports, there's more and more coming in on climate change. So it explains how you apply some of the ISAs to the climate change amounts and disclosures that are being put into financial reports in the sort of current financial statements. And we'll continue to monitor whether there's more that we need to do like that. So we do believe that it's quite a good package of standards for now. Obviously, we're all aware that the IFRS Foundation trustees have a consultation out at the moment looking at sustainability and setting up a board to set sustainability standards. Once that does happen, we will reassess whether we need to do more in that space. Obviously, we always look for the need to have assurance on it. It will be a framework. We may be able to use 3000, but obviously we don't know what that framework will be, so we're not sure at this point. So we sort of have our package on non-financial information for now. We do believe that it's usable in most circumstances for now, but as the world changes, obviously we'll continue to monitor, and then if they do have these sustainability standards that create this framework, we'll have a look at either how we apply ISA 3000 or whether we need a new standard, assurance standard for that framework. Next slide, please. So just on the EER guidance, so these are just some examples of the types of frameworks that are covered by this EER guidance. On the right-hand side, you can see there's EER reporting. So this EER guidance covers things like greenhouse gas emissions, integrated reporting, intellectual capital management commentary, public sector service performance statements, and sustainability. And then you've got the frameworks down the side that they sort of built off. And it tells you how to carry out the reasonable assurance engagement in terms of ISA 3000. And really the reason that we did this was just to get a more consistent and appropriate application of 3000. It's a very helpful document. We expect it to be out by March 2021. And we will continue to provide thought leadership on assurance issues as we pick them up. So I think I've been going for a while, so that's probably what I wanted to say. On the next slide is just, we do have Twitter, LinkedIn. Obviously, we have regular updates. We've got a website with all information about all of our projects. We've got individual project pages. We've been issuing a lot this year, so there's some very helpful guidance on there. But please to join our LinkedIn and follow us on our Twitter. And then when we do have board meetings and public meetings, we also do stream them on YouTube if you're interested in hearing about any of the work that we do. We have quarterly meetings, our agendas are public, our papers are public and then the meetings are public. So if you do want to listen, feel free. So that just gives you a little bit of information about where you can find us and where you can find more information. So I think with that, I will stop talking and give somebody else a chance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman, for very comprehensive sharing about the future of the auditing standards, yeah, and some of the transitioning strategy for IASB. And yeah, like I say, the question and answer session will be held until the second and third panelists present. Thank you, Ms. Bowman. And I will go to the second panelist, Dr. Ari Wibowo from P2PK. As a representative of the P2PK, maybe the presentation will be about the auditing and assurance profession in Indonesia and the future of accounting and audit from the regulator point of view. For Pak Ari Wibowo, please.
Okay, thank you, Pak Stefanus, for your introduction. Yes, this presentation I will present as a regulator perspective. So next slide. This I have three parts of this presentation. The first part is future of the financial reporting, which is if we discuss about audit, we cannot discuss separately with financial reporting. So this is the important part, and then the second one is future of audit, and the third one and the last one is the what has we done and what we will do as a regulator in a regulator update. Next slide, please. Okay, the first slide is I try to explain about what is accounting. Definition of accounting according to AAA, American Accounting Association. Accounting is the process of identifying, measuring, and communicating economic information to permit informed judgments and decisions by user of information. Pay attention to the bold one. Say that accounting, the purpose of accounting is permit informed judgment and decision by user of information. So next slide, please. So what about what happened to the now or the current condition? I quote from the book of The End of Accounting. It said that relevant of accounting information is fast shrinking. In 17, 18, or 18 to 90% company value was tangible asset. Today, it's dropped to less than 40%. So it's much more intangible than tangible. And then, statistically, relative contribution of various information sources investor use to value security of company. From the book said that only 28.4% identified sources, such as 18% is management forecast of guidance, 6.2% is analyst forecast, 3.4% is earning announcement or feeling. The biggest part is 71.6% is multiple unidentified sources like media report, industry, insight, intelligence, government statistic, etc. The interesting part is only 3.4% of the total information that investor use in their decision come from financial reports. So you can imagine that what accountant hard work, what accountant did to make the financial reports. Only investor only see that as a 3.4% from the total information that they use. So these three reasons for why information collapses because of dominance of intangible, and then accounting based on estimate or forecast, not fact. Then the last one, but I think this is the important one, is both transaction and event create value, but accounting only reflect the transaction. So that's why most of people said that in 2016 or 17 said accounting will be diminished. Or and then next one. No. So what can we do? What we can do So this is the company will be winner if they also combine in that report not only profit or cash but also governance. This will make them king in this area, in this condition. So this how perspective change can make the company will be better. Next one. So about the after the perspective change, now this is the global response about the future of financial reporting. Nowadays, and we most of us know that there's a financial GAAP like IFRS or US GAAP, and there's also now it's also about there's another report on sustainability. That called sustainability disclosure. Now, about the financial, it's we know that it's already one standard for the world IFRS, but for the non-financial information such as in the sustainability disclosure, it's a lot of organization make that standard. So it's also difficult for accountant, and it's like Miss Beverly said that although auditor is equipped with the SA 3000 for the audit for the non-financial information, but in the future it will combine. You can see in the right side of this block, non-financial information is standard by various organizations such as IIRC, International Integrated Reporting Council, and then Sustainability Accounting Standard Board, and also Climate Disclosure Standard Board, then Carbon Disclosure Project, and the last one is Global Reporting Initiative, which that standard is used by OJK right now. In the future, they have initiated the movement to make one standard, and the IFAC have the initiation to merge that standard into the comprehensive corporate reporting. That's the fact that we all accountant must prepare for the time has come for the comprehensive. So it's need the accountant will need more skill set other than accounting. Okay. Next slide. Now let's talk about audit. After the financial reporting, we talk about audit. Okay. There's expectation gap in the public in now. According to the ICA 200 said that purpose of an audit is to enhance the degree of confidence of intended users in the financial statement. This is achieved by the expression of an opinion by the auditor or on whether the final statements are prepared in all material respect in accordance with an applicable financial reporting framework. But like in the base UK and also in most of public opinion in Indonesia, that public misunderstand audit. This public said that audit doesn't look at the future. Audit doesn't look for fraud, and audit doesn't look at the compliance with the law beside accounting standard. So that's the opinion of in the world. Then this is in UK, and I suppose that it also happened in Indonesia. So this is the challenge that we have to face. Okay, next step. This is what we appreciate, that the launching or the implementation of key audit matters is very significant for us as a regulator, and also it will increase the public trust to auditor. Why? Because the auditor must must disclose a key audit matter that they found in when they do an audit to the financial report. What come do is to enhancing the communicative value of the audit report by offering better transparency about the audit. It provides additional information to users to understand the professional judgment of the auditors. It helps in understanding the areas of significant management judgment in audited financial statement, and may encourage users to further engage with the audit committee and management by using the information in CAMS. So, when the auditor implement this CAMS standard, it will overcome the gap and the gap, like I said in before slide, that maybe it will make public more trust to auditor. Then that auditor may also present the now and future condition about the company. Next one. Okay, now I show you the global survey of accounting professional by Smartfolk in this year, that what COVID-19 has done to the accounting profession. I believe that COVID-19 fastened the development of the profession, such as using the IT and that big data and maybe AI someday. This is the survey show that majority of firm, 62%, who felt they are responding to COVID-19 successfully were more likely to be using cloud-based technology. So the firm that successfully passed this COVID-19 is using cloud-based technology. This is the first step of the revolution industry 4.0 to the accounting profession. Okay, and then the second one is firm which identified themselves are being less successfully in their response to the pandemic are putting more energy into incorporating new technology to enable remote work and communication with team members and clients. This happened to the firm that not ready to face the pandemic COVID-19, so they have to spend more energy. Energy mean more resources, such as money or human resource, and etc. And then firms that already had at least one cloud system and in place prior to the COVID-19 pandemic fare far better than firms that did not have any cloud system in place. So they prove that company that using the cloud-based technology is superior to the other one. The firms that were more successful in dealing with the pandemic offer virtual collaboration tools to their client at higher rate than firms that were less successful. Firms who rated themselves as less successful use postal mail at a higher rate than average firm. So this also proves that firm that agile, that move and use virtual collaboration to face the COVID-19 is more successful than the other one. Okay, the last one is majority of respondents were concerned with ensuring the security of communication and document in the process of increasing use of the virtual operation. This is okay. This is one is the concern that the use of technology into the audit process is must put the consideration to the security itself. Then firm must put much more energy and resources to make sure that security safe. Okay, next one. Okay, that one proof that technology will merge to the accounting practice in the world, and especially in Indonesia. So that's why accountant need more skill set than the accounting. Okay. So this is the third part and the last part of my presentation is what regulator has done and will do in the next future. Okay, the first one is redesign of supervision of P2PK. Okay, in the first part is that we as a regulator try to make ourselves more agile to implement the recent update, and so that's why we redesign our supervision system, our business process system to supervise all financial profession, including for the public accountant and also for registered accountant. Okay, the second one is maintaining a quality service. P2PK and professional association are making their best effort to reduce the gap of the international standard, and also we have synergized the code of ethics that we have one code of ethics for all kind of accountant in business and also accountant in practice. That's the main reason that we as a regulator like to have one code of ethics, that this new code ethic is implement the no clerk to the all accountant. So all accountant in business or in practice also have to obey the no clerk rule, that they have to implement the no clerk. So it will enhance the quality of financial reporting from begin process in the accounting in business, also the end of the process by the audit, by the accountant in practice will have the same code of ethics, and will if all accountant has obeyed the no clerk rule, I believe that financial report that it will have the good quality, better quality than before. Okay, and then the last one is we have now a financial reporting bill draft. We hope that Parliament will discuss it in the next year. What is the financial reporting bill will enhance the financial reporting ecosystem. It will rule the begin of the process, like the company must use the competent person as accountant mandate, and also we have the ideal purpose is that one report for multi-purposes, that report that submitted to the bank is the same as report that submitted to the tax office, although there's some reconciliation. And then we also want to strengthen the Indonesian standard setter to make them more independent. So the legitimacy, we hope that our bill will increase legitimation of the financial reporting standard for broader public interest. And the last purpose is that people or public have more trust to the financial reporting system in Indonesia. In that ecosystem, in that ideal ecosystem, I hope that all profession are growing better, such as auditor, like Bu Sum said that most of public accountant are old. I mean older than me. Most of them older than me. Maybe 60 or 70%. That's the opportunity for the young accountant to pursue that public accountant profession. In that ideal ecosystem, I hope that it will grow much more than now. Much more quantity. If right now we have only 1,600 or 1,600 public accountant, but I believe that we in the ideal ecosystem we will need more than 10 or 20,000 public accountant in Indonesia. So that's the opportunity that we hope that by the financial reporting bill it will establish. Okay, next one. Okay, that's the end of my presentation. Okay, I give back to Pak Stefanus.
Thank you, Dr. Ari Wibowo, for the expert sharing today. Some points I highlighted here is update from the regulators about the redesign the supervision, and then maintaining quality of service, and about the most important maybe about the financial reporting bills. Yeah, that's also has the impact on the preparer also, not only the auditor. Okay, and one statement that I'm interested in your presentation is the crisis accelerate the changes. Yeah, maybe everybody must change. No place for racist to change people now because of the pandemic. Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Ari Wibowo, and maybe I will continue directly to panelist number 3, Mr. Stephen Tanggara from the board Indonesian Institute of Public Accountant. Yeah, Pak Stephen Tanggara, please.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Stefanus. So, can you hear me, Pak? Kedengaran suaranya?
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you. So, good day, everyone. Selamat siang, Bapak Ibu sekalian. I hope you are all staying safe and healthy. So, probably go to the next page, please, for the slides. Yeah, Pak Stefanus have introduced me before, so I don't think we need another round for my profile. We can move to the next page, Mbak Sinta. Yeah, we have just heard a very good sharing from Miss Beverly as the standard setter, and of course from Pak Ari as well from the regulator perspective. Thanks for the presentation, Miss Beverly and Pak Ari. That is actually indeed a very good presentation. So now what I really want to try to discuss in this session is really what will be the future of the audit from the perspective of the practitioners. So in particular as the public accountant, right? Ya, jadi tadi kita udah discuss dari sisi standard setter dan regulator. Saya akan coba masuk dari aspek praktisinya gitu. The question on how the audit could or should evolve is a complex one, I would say. So it relates to many different issues, many different aspects, various interests from multiple stakeholders, and etc. So in this very brief session, I will just try to discuss the core things to address on these 3 items, as you can see on the screen: the value to the stakeholders, and then how the audit should then evolve for the future. Also, how then we leverage data and analytics into the insight. So probably let me start from the first one. Please, for the next page. Yeah, another one. Yeah, okay. So first is the value for the stakeholders. Nilai untuk pemangku kepentingan ya, value for the stakeholders. obviously, before we talk on what needs to be changed from the audit profession or the audit itself, is the first really the crucial element is to understand what is actually the value are people looking for from the audit. What are the expectations in the future, right? Jadi apa aja yang di-value oleh stakeholders nanti di masa yang akan datang. So I think that is the crucial question which we probably need to answer. And the first one is really the audit quality, kualitas audit. No surprise on this. Users, stakeholders, investors are always expecting auditor to consistently deliver a high quality audit, right? And nothing different from today. I mean, they're always expecting us to deliver a good one, a good quality audit. But what then is changing is that now the stakeholders have been better and better understand that people actually is the most important part of the process itself. So obviously CPA title is important, right? But ensuring the auditor have the skills and experience are critical, are crucial, right? So I think that then lead to that the stakeholders believe that one of the key things to be invested is actually the people, right? And the investment is really investment not only for hiring people during the talent war on the market, but it's also really on the investing for the training, investing for developing the people, equipping them to do their jobs, right? So not only hiring, but continuously developing people across the process is really important, and the stakeholders really believe on that things. That also includes the culture of then how the skepticism would be built during the process, how the junior auditor then have the ability to question, to challenge the auditee during the audit process. On the other side, jadi di sisi lain, enhancing audit quality is not only related to the auditors. I think Pak Ari also mentioned about this before, that directors, management need to also have more responsibility over the financial statements, creating a stronger framework, ecosystem of responsibility that would actually help to improve the quality of the reported information. And I guess this is probably the area where the regulator actually can heavily involve. And I think Pak Ari rightfully mentioned that the undang-undang pelaporan keuangan probably one of the key things to go to this direction, right? Okay, next page, please. Yeah. Now the second value is beyond the historical information, bukan cuma sekedar informasi historis. So people, users, stakeholders are now more and more expecting that auditor can share the view on the company's risk, not only the historical information. So they would like to hear from the auditor what are the internal control observation, what are the identification of fraud risk, for example, and even probably they are expecting for the business or operational risk faced by the company. What are the challenges and how they need to cope with that in the future. So again, it's a comprehensive view, not only from the historical financial information, but also a holistic view around what is the risk faced by the company and how they can deal with that. So in short, in very short, they want to hear more. They want to hear more from the auditors, right? Next page, please. Yeah, the third one, the third value is really around the technology. So the stakeholders are enthusiastic, if you like, around the technology. They now believe that technology can always help auditor to do the more effective and more efficient audit, right? Better result, faster, lebih cepat, lebih baik. They expect that then the auditor can also utilize their technology for the audits. Melek teknologi ya, kalau in bahasa we say. Jadi can know the technology, can apply the technology for the audit process. That probably linked to the second part where probably based on the data then analyzed by the auditor, they can provide some insight, some input. What are the anomalies? I think Ms. Beverly said about this before as well. What are the anomalies? What are the outlier items happen in the company throughout the period, and expect that through that investment in technology, then the auditor can say something about that particular items. So, of course, I think the side note of that is always there are limits for technology. Right? For example, the judgmental area is always the role for the human auditor. The estimate, judgment, how they build with that assumptions that will probably take more the role from the human and probably cannot be really replaced by the technology. So still there are rooms for people collaborating with the AI, with the data tools and everything. So next page, please, to just summarize what then need to be evolved for the future. Yeah, another one, please. Yeah, the next page. Yeah, thank you. So now with the combination of those value expected by the stakeholders, value expected by the users, then what we can see is there's a few key areas, key viewpoints that we can extract together. And as you can see that while auditors are expected to maintain a continuous high quality audits, as number one you can see on the screen there, they are also expected to provide insights around risk, challenge, potential problems in the future, right? So the combination between the high quality of audits as well as the inputs, feedbacks, comments, observation around what happened in the company, that goes to number 2 and number 3. But at the same time, right, technology is always changing, and auditors should invest either in the technology tools as well as in people. And the key things what also Bu Sumiati mentioned earlier in this morning is that the people skills is not really on the accounting and auditing only, right? It's also around the technology skill, how you then apply the technology. What is your idea around the utilizing the tools and the function? But the other part also, most importantly, I think the communication skill, which was rightfully mentioned as well this morning, that communication is also very important, because by that basis, then you can deliver your insights, you can communicate well. You can communicate well to management and to your client, right? Okay, the last part of my session, Basinta probably, yeah, leveraging data and analytics into the insights. Okay, so now after you heard a lot in the market that technology now allows people to be more efficient and to be more effective. Technology allows auditor to capture and analyze data, the greater amounts of data, right? Then what that mean from the perspective of doing the audit approach and audit procedure? It's really one of the key changes is that instead of using really a sampling-based approach in the past, now as an auditor we can now have a more full population analysis. You can see the full picture of the transactions, the events, the company. You can see the trend, what is the outlier, what is the anomalies happen in certain expenses, for example. You can map the whole holistic numeric data into the pattern you want to see, into the trend you want to see. And after that, you can really focus on what is the risk. You can really focus what to that anomalies. You can really focus to that particular items, right? So that is one of the key elements what people are expecting, and that is manageable from the perspective of using the technology. There are many different tools, I would say, artificial intelligence to support the analysis. Ms. Beverly also mentioned about the RPA, the robotic process automation. That is indeed not only for the auditor. the corporate reporting also can use this for reducing their recurring day-to-day works to perform the regular reconciliation, for example, and utilize the people to have a more logical analysis thinking rather than the administrative part of the work. So next page, please. Oh, yeah, okay. So as a conclusion, I think as the other profession and everything in the world, audit needs to stay relevant, right? All the professions need to stay relevant, and in order for us to stay better in the market, serving the client better in the industry, we need, as a profession, auditor needs to stay relevant. And in order to stay relevant, we cannot focus really on the audit perspective only. There are many components in the ecosystem, which was also mentioned by Ari earlier before that including the ecosystem around the standard setter, that including the regulators, investors, audit committee, for example, and as well as the other part, including management. So again, it is not only about technology. It is not only about building technology, investing in technology. It's also about the people skill. It's also about the delivering insights to the customers, to the clients, right? And I think I quote something here that you can't do today's job with yesterday method and be in business tomorrow. So I think the key highlight points is everything needs to stay relevant, include our audit profession. So, and then that leads to us on how to adjust to the current circumstances. That's all from me, Pak Stefanus. I think a very quick one. Over back to you. Thank you, Pak.
Thank you very much, Pak Stephen, for the presentation. And now we have complete 3 panelists to present their materials. And now we start with the question and answer session. We have 5 questions here that have been submitted by the participants. Maybe question number 1, I think, is for Pak Stephen. Ya. Bagaimana auditor menyikapi jika ada klien yang penyajian laporan keuangan tidak ada salah saji material, namun memungkinkan usahanya tidak dapat dilanjutkan? Mungkin ini lebih relevan ke practitioner. Silakan, Pak.
Baik, Pak Stefanus. Thank you for the questions, Anggun. A good one. Ini saya jawab bahasa Indonesia atau bahasa Inggris ya, Pak?
Sub user.
Okay. So one of the assumption of the preparation of the financial statement, salah satu asumsinya itu memang going concern ya, the ability of the company to operate, untuk melanjutkan bisnisnya selama paling tidak 12 bulan ke depan gitu. Jadi kalau asumsi itu tidak terjadi, basis going concern basically tidak bisa dipakai. Mungkin harus pakai basis accounting yang lain gitu, dengan likuidasi contohnya. Jadi the key points is the preparation no material misstatement is a different thing. Tapi kalau tidak dapat dilanjutkan, artinya then the basis penggunaan asumsi going concern tidak dapat digunakan, dan kemudian banyak pengukuran nanti di dalam laporan keuangan yang akan berubah, dan manajemen harus menerapkan basis pengukuran tersebut yang sesuai dengan kondisinya, yang bukan menggunakan going concern basis, Pak Stefanus.
Right.
Mungkin itu secara singkat dari saya.
Alright, I think question number 2 is for Pak Stephen also. Bagaimana auditor menyikapi perjanjian dibuat antara KAP dengan klien untuk menemukan fraud pada perusahaan di mana ada deposito 26M yang tidak dicatat? I think this is questions for practitioner. Am I right?
Baik, Pak Stefanus. Banyak ini ya jadinya buat saya nih ya. Auditor menyikapi perjanjian yang dibuat antara KAP dengan klien untuk menemukan fraud pada perusahaan di mana. Oke. Jadi ada banyak jenis engagement, penugasan antara auditor dengan klien ya. Tentunya tergantung juga kebutuhan yang diperlukan oleh si tadi yang melakukan penunjukan atau klien. Nah, kalau kita bicara ada general framework of audit itu kan memang untuk apakah ada yang material misstatement dalam laporan keuangan yang disajikan oleh perusahaan. Jadi itu tidak spesifik untuk specifically tujuannya bukan langsung untuk menemukan fraud pada hal tertentu gitu seperti yang ditanyakan ini. Jadi Mbak Balia mungkin di sini ya, kalau memang ada perjanjian, ada request tertentu yang diminta oleh klien, penugasannya harus dipilih dulu, disesuaikan dulu, didiskusikan dulu juga dengan klien. Kira-kira penugasannya spesifik untuk tujuannya apa, dan nanti baru ditentukan Mbak Balia engagement audit atau assurance yang ingin digunakan atau yang bisa digunakan itu apa. Jadi tidak melulu kemudian langsung bisa using di auditing standard gitu ya. Jadi tentunya nanti akan tergantung banyak faktor. Seperti apa kedalaman testingnya, prosesnya sendiri melibatkan pihak ketiga contohnya atau tidak. Jadi mungkin itu banyak faktor yang nanti harus dipertimbangkan. Tapi akan ada standar aturannya yang bisa digunakan sebagai acuan, Mbak Bali ya. Itu dari saya, Pak Stefanus.
Excellent. Maybe Balia, the explanation has already answered your questions. And question number 3, I think this is about the ethical code. Yeah. Maybe Ms. Bowman can answer this. How to apply the digitalized financial reporting to audit ethic codes? What should the professional do for the future environment changing? Maybe this question is about the international issues also. Ms. Bowman.
Yeah, so I'm not a complete expert in the ethic code, but just thinking about it, I think a lot of the same requirements would apply for the ethics code. So I think things like, obviously, if you're in a digital environment, there's requirements in the ethics code around professional competence and thinking about what needs to be done there. So you may need a different kind of person to undertake the work. And then also just thinking a little bit around, obviously things like independence would stay the same. So still wouldn't be able to have that interaction of actually doing the accounting if the client themselves don't have the experts. And then obviously just thinking about professional skepticism becomes a little bit different in what you're given. So a little bit of the things that I was talking about earlier, and when you're given documents, can you take them as being genuine? How you interact with the client. So a lot of that sort of the thoughts around professional skepticism and how the auditor exercises their professional skepticism may be a little bit different. I'm not sure whether Stephen or Ari have anything that they might want to add to that.
Yes, please, Pak Stephen or Ari, maybe you have another explanation.
No, I think that covers also my comments, Pak Stefanus.
Okay, and that's for Ibu Rahmawati Aziza from Brenton, Indonesia. And question number 4: what is the idea of remote audit for future audits? What will change the current audit? What then needs to be prepared? I think Ms. Bowman also can answer this question.
Sure. So I've just quickly jotted down a couple of points thinking about what would be different. I think the planning will be different. I think the way that obviously the timing of the audit and who's involved, again, just thinking about if you need experts, if it's a remote audit, that's done in a different way. So if you need specialists, experts, those kinds of things, you may need a stock count. And it's a remote audit. What are you going to do if we can't actually access it or go there? Are there other procedures? So there may be some procedures that you may have done in the current audit. It becomes a remote audit. You have to start thinking about whether you're able to actually do the same kinds of procedures. Thinking about the interactions with management and those charged with governance. Again, when we're at audits and we at the client and you need to ask a question, you get off your chair and you go down the passage and you ask a question. That may not be as easy in a remote audit. So there may need to be more planning around the interactions with both management and the directors or those charged with governance, and making sure that the requirements of the auditing standards, because there's very specific areas that questions have to be asked, that those are actually covered off in some of the interactions that happen. And then just also there may be different risks and the way that the auditor responds. So when looking at the risks of material misstatements, once you go into a remote audit, really thinking about whether those risks have changed from the current audit. And the COVID environment is a good example of, so not only did auditors go remote, but the entities themselves also became much more virtual. People sort of weren't allowed to go into the office. There would have been a huge impact on controls and the control environment. So the controls are not the same. There may be controls at the beginning of the year, there may be controls at the end of the year, but what happened in that intervening period, so really focusing in on that. So you may need to do work at different times in the year, whereas if you were doing sort of testing of controls ordinarily, you'd probably just do it at one point and then just some lighter work around whether the control would be operating throughout the year. That wouldn't be the case necessarily once you go remote in the year that it goes remote. So just thinking about the different areas that are impacted by the move to a remote environment. So those are just some thoughts that I'd had around some of the bigger things that will change once it becomes remote. But a lot of the auditing standards would still apply in the same way, and the audit itself basically the same, but it's the nature of the underlying evidence and circumstances of the client that has changed, and that needs to be taken account of. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think I have to ask Pak Ari also about the remote audit. Maybe you have idea from the government side. Is there any regulation related to the remote audit?
Oh, okay. About the remote audit, I think we will consider that as the new normal of the audit process, as long as it not breach the code of ethics. Then we know that remote audit, as I present in my presentation, that during the pandemic COVID-19 is showing that audit can also done by remote. So, but yes, as Beverly said before, that it also need the specific analysis or maybe some technology, but it will change it. I think what they done during COVID-19 can continue to the near future. Then that will change also in the preparation of the audit. I think the government will support the remote audit as long as that's breach the code of ethics.
Okay, that's the idea from the government side. Okay, now the next questions, I think it is for Pak Stephen also. Apa yang diharapkan dari lulusan akuntansi ketika masuk ke HP? Maybe you, as a director of the PwC Indonesia.
Okay. Yeah. I think similar with what are the profession expect in general, that once you go into a certain professional service, ketika masuk pekerjaan industri tertentu gitu ya, of course the basic knowledge around the, contohnya kalau di HP adalah akuntansi dan auditing. Then you need to at least have the basic knowledge over the accounting. You need to have the basic knowledge of the auditing, right? That is, I think, really the key elements you really need to have as the starting point. Of course, later nanti selama prosesnya tentunya you learn during the process. Belajar lewat ini ya, penugasan, lewat pengalaman. Dan I believe there's a lot of training, there's a lot of events that you can join. Contohnya di kantor masing-masing, nanti juga ada lewat IAPI. Our association also provide numerous, banyak program pendidikan berkelanjutan gitu ya, PPL yang kita bisa ikutin, that you can follow, you can always update yourself, you can update your knowledge, tergantung apakah ada new accounting standards, new auditing standards. Jadi don't worry that kamu nggak ada knowledge tambahan once you join the firm, once you join the profession. Ketika kamu buka KAP misalnya, nggak usah khawatir. I think the first basic step is to have the knowledge dulu, accounting dan auditing. I think nanti along the way pasti akan sambil belajar juga. Dan kalau tadi pertanyaannya masih ada gap masifnya update ilmu akuntansi, nanti along the way selama kamu melaksanakan pekerjaannya ya, I believe you can always dapat ilmu yang baru nanti ketika melakukan penugasannya. Mungkin itu dari saya secara umum, Pak Stefanus.
Okay, thank you, Pak Stephen. And the next question is for you too. To Stephen, could you share what is the impact of auditor work during COVID-19 pandemic?
Okay. I think this has been covered as well a bit before from Ms. Beverly and Pak Ari ya. Jadi memang during this COVID pandemic ini yang paling berasa the way we then need to use the technology. Jadi biasanya nggak pernah pakai teknologi, sekarang jadi mau nggak mau is a must to use technology. Like this session kan kita pakai virtual session ya. Jadi dealing with the auditor, dealing between auditor and the client itu kebanyakan lewat virtual. You discuss items, you talk, melakukan meeting dengan klien rata-rata melalui sesi virtual. Submission of data, exactly, you pointed rightly. Kalau dulu misalnya hard copy paper di-provide oleh klien kepada auditor, now it needs to be modified, jadi misalnya dikirimin scan kopinya, dikirimin soft filenya untuk klien, bagi klien untuk kemudian dikirimkan oleh auditor untuk diperiksa. Of course tentunya kalau kamu butuh dokumen originalnya, you can always ask kan, bisa minta. Kalau ada beberapa yang kamu pengen lihat kontrak atau dokumen aslinya, bisa minta ke klien. Tapi betul, document and submission of data is one of the key changes as well. Dan juga betul yang poin di sini disampaikan, physical inventory observation. Ini yang memang a lot of discussion happen nowadays. Dan IAP juga recently publish a technical news flash. Kita pasti kasih panduan dari IAP mengenai bagaimana kira-kira respon auditor, karena kan doing physical inventory observation is one of the mandatory procedures dalam audit. Jadi bagaimana kalau kita mau inventory physical observation tapi kita khawatir dengan COVID, kita khawatir dengan kesehatan atau keselamatan our personnel. Klien juga belum tentu accept kita datang gitu kan. You need to do rapid test, you need to do swab misalnya kayak gitu. Jadi ada beberapa alternatif yang nanti mungkin kalau teman-teman bisa baca di websitenya IAP, ada panduan technical news flash-nya baru dirilis kurang lebih minggu lalu. It describe kurang lebih alternatif procedures-nya apa. Bisa salah satunya virtual counting. Ada di beberapa tempat itu udah pakai drone, Pak Stefanus, ngitung gitu kan. Untuk beberapa tentunya item tertentu yang nggak bisa semua inventory using drone. Kebanyakan pakai kamera, misalnya ada satu yang menyorot counting procedures, satu kamera wide eye, kamera wide angle gitu supaya bisa lihat the whole proses secara keseluruhan, supaya bisa interaksinya seperti kayak kita datang langsung ke lokasi gitu. Tapi there are various of procedures di dalamnya, di dalam technical news flash. Jadi I think that again comes back to Pak Ari, which just mentioned very good, bahwa even dalam masa pandemik ini kita nggak bisa mengurangi proses kualitas audit yang kita hasilkan. Jadi tetap standar audit harus kita laksanakan, caranya aja yang berbeda, caranya aja yang kita adjust. Mungkin itu Pak Stefanus.
Alright, thank you Pak Stephen.
Thank you.
Next question, I think about the accounting profession. Is it the company have effect from the COVID-19 pandemic? I think for the context of Indonesia, Pak Ari Wibowo maybe can answer this question.
Okay.
Pak Ari.
It's I think it's already covered by all of panelists this morning that it's also COVID-19 also have impact to accounting profession. It's all about how to do. So the impact is only how, but yeah, that's why you as the accountant, as the auditor, you must use technology to address that's how process to overcome the COVID-19. That's only the answer. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Last questions. Okay. This is about the practice in audit also. So maybe Pak Stephen can answer this question. Yeah. What is the limitation of the general audit? Fail to track the big dummy transaction and so on.
Okay. Thank you. Good question. Jadi limitation of general audit of financial reporting. Of course, jadi dari sisi standard audit, memang untuk yang general framework, it has been designed to address apakah then there is a material misstatement di dalam suatu laporan keuangan. Nah, memang salah satu kuncinya kalau kita lihat di opini memang menegaskan juga tanggung jawab manajemen dalam membangun internal control. Membangun pengendalian yang strong within the company. Jadi memang ini bukan satu aspek aja dari sisi auditor, tapi we need a cross coordination antara auditor dengan auditee. Jadi yang saya lagi mau katakan, kalau we have the appropriate audit procedures all applying the auditing standard appropriately, and on the other hand, the client and management apply the accounting standard effectively, apply an internal control effectively, termasuk the whole aspects of providing the data, tidak berintention untuk menyembunyikan data, tidak berintention untuk melakukan kolusi misalnya di dalam firm, di dalam company. Then theoretically it should be able to manage bahwa tidak ada material misstatement di dalam laporan keuangan. Tentunya tadi selama all the required audit procedures dilakukan, dan dari sisi manajemen internal control di-build dengan baik, penerapan accounting standard diterapkan dengan baik. Nah, memang kadangkala ada gap-nya di sana. So internal control mungkin belum terlalu baik, auditing standard probably not executed properly, accounting standard mungkin belum dipahami terlalu baik. Nah, itu yang kadang-kadang menjadi gap-nya Pak Stefanus dari sisi general audit reporting. Tadi makanya dari sisi stakeholders selain melihatnya juga kita build audit profession, di satu sisi kita tingkatkan profesi audit dengan kemampuan skillsnya, tapi di sisi lain make sure that management juga punya responsibility membuat financial atau internal control yang baik. Itu juga nggak kalah pentingnya, dan kedua itu sebenarnya yang akan bisa membantu untuk mengurangi risiko kegagalan audit dalam menemukan material misstatement.
Alright, thank you very much, Pak Steven. I think this is the last questions for the participants. Again, this is about the practice, so maybe Pak Steven can answer this.
Okay.
This is about the cost of.
But in case of Ari or Beverly have some comments, just let us. Just add. Sebenarnya it depends. Jadi ada yang memang softwarenya itu very sophisticated, end-to-end proses. Jadi for example dari proses risk assessment, planning until the financial reporting itu udah bisa diarahkan using a technology. Dan probably akan berbeda dengan investasi yang memang cuma fokus di area tertentu, katakanlah lebih ke misalnya dokumentasi audit saja atau ke misalnya risk assessment saja gitu ya. Jadi memang banyak audit software dan ini bisa ditemukan dengan mudah di berbagai firm, di berbagai company. Dari P2PK setahu saya juga memang ada auditing software yang juga oke. Nah, jadi banyak yang bisa di leverage. It's not, nggak harus yang mahal, nggak harus yang ekstensif. Yang penting disesuaikan dengan kebutuhan, karena kan berbeda klien tentunya berbeda juga kebutuhan atas complexity dari software ataupun tools itu sendiri. Dan kalau kita mungkin saya nyambung pertanyaan kedua, remote audit sebenarnya nggak melulu soal software tadi. Remote audit tadi Pak Ari udah mention lebih ke how then we do the audit, koordinasinya dengan klien. Kalau software memang dengan remote atau tidak remote audit memang dari awal juga sudah ada gitu. Jadi it's a different thing. Tapi back to the questions, itu very range, bisa tergantung kebutuhan dari masing-masing auditor mungkin menurut saya. Pak Stefanus.
All right. Okay, so
Can I, some explanation.
maybe Pak Ari will.
As Stephen said before that P2PK has also audit tool. Yes, it's free. It's called Atlas for the audit tool. That's a simple audit tool, but already use the SPAP in that tool. It's free. Then you can study it or you follow the training in the ERP. So but the Atlas you cannot compare it with the PwC has is very complicated as Stephen had in PwC, but it have minimum requirement to do the audit. So yeah, I think if you want to have free audit tool, you can download the Atlas. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pak Ari.
Okay. Okay, I think this is the end of the discussion. Yeah. Thank you for answering all the questions for the three panelists, and we have give a big appreciation for you all. And sorry. Okay, it is a great pleasure to have you with us for this event, CPA Days 2020. And so this concludes the seminar. Thank you for all the panelists and all the participants. We hope you have learned something new and enjoyed this presentation. Thank you very much. And
thank you, Pak.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, Pak Stefanus.
Thank you, Pak Ari. Yeah.
Bye, Stephen.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman.
Terima kasih, Pak Ari, Pak Stefanus.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
I'll give back the session to MC. Thank you very much.
Thank you all panelists and moderators for this amazing session. We hope the sharing of our knowledge and insight for being a trusted professional.
Dan terima kasih kami ucapkan